Recording. All right, so it is still Sunday afternoon. We are still in the last day of the Coastal Magic Convention 10th anniversary weekend. We are still not at the beach. We are still in our little computer boxes, but luckily we can all still be together even in our little computer boxes. Hopefully we will see all of you by the beach next year in February. That is the goal. But for now, we get to talk about fantasy and science fiction. And our panelists are all going to be giving you lots of information about their own books and what they love about fantasy and sci-fi and recommendations and all of that kind of stuff. So definitely lots of information to get. I'm going to be, I promise that I am paying attention to our panelists, but I will be watching a little bit off screen from time to time so that I can get questions and comments that you guys post while you're watching. I will make sure that I get those into the panel. Even though now we've gone from a trio to a quartet, so that's nice. I'm sure our fur babies probably got lots of opinions about science fiction and fantasy.
He has lots of opinions about everything, so yes.
Yes, I am not at all surprised. Okay, so we actually are missing one of our panelists, so I'm hoping that we will see him soon. If so, we'll just add him on when he gets here. In the meantime, Tori, you want to start us off? Let people know who you are and what you write.
Absolutely, and hi everybody. Most readers that come to Coastal Magic know me as Victoria Sue, and in that pen name, I write male, mainly paranormal, action and adventure, a lot of MPreg, which is male pregnancy, a lot of shifters, some urban fantasy with people who have amazing powers by DNA changes. But in this pen name, Tori Kellett, that I started last year, I write male, female, alien romance, and soon to be fae romance as well.
Nice.
So it's all still the paranormal jam.
Yeah.
It just depends on certain body parts, really.
I love that you're adding fae. That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
All right, Susan.
Hi, everyone. I'm S.C. Smith. I'm a New York Times, USA Today bestselling author, and I write a lot of the sci-fi romance. I have the Dragon Lords of Valdir. I have the Draglings of Valdir, the Seraphim Warriors. I have the Alliance series, the Lords of Cassius series, Cosmos Gateway. I also write a lot of paranormal. So I also have my Seven Kingdoms series, my More Than Human series, which that has a little twist on it because the shifters rule the world and they think humans are extinct until one of the guys happens to find one in a trap that he wasn't expecting. And he's like, wait a minute, I wrote my dissertation on their extinction and here's one. So it's kind of neat, you know, having that little twist on it.
Right.
But I have well over, if you count using multiple languages, because I have French, German, Italian, and Spanish, and one in Chinese. I have about 200 books out.
Wow. All right, Cecilia.
Hello, I am Cecilia Dominic. Yes. I know, since everybody's wondering, this handsome fellow is Timothy Mouse. He is my supervisor, my writing buddy. And yes, I just came back from a week. We actually kept our Florida trip, even though the conference went virtual. And so he's extra clingy today. Yes. So I write urban fantasy and steampunk. My urban fantasy series are the Lycanthropy Files, which are basically werewolves and other paranormal creatures with the twist. The werewolves, the premise there is, what if lycanthropy were a genetic disorder, but the cure wasn't entirely medical? I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and so I like to bring the science and the magic all together.
Nice.
I also have my spin-off series, The Fae Files. So starring one of those characters who just kept coming back and coming, and you know, she demanded her own thing because she's a fae. And so in her case, she is trying to figure out the origin of the leak that kind of started the Lycanthropy Files. And she has the one chance to return home to figure this out. But as we all know, Fae bargains are always loaded with tricks.
Yeah.
Yes. I also have my Dreamweavers and Truth Seekers series. So that one is coming out of my career as a sleep psychologist. Basically, it's all about the collective unconscious, the Greek gods as being archetypes. I basically take everything I love about mythology and fairy tales and mush it all together.
I like it.
And then, yes, I'm all about, as you can tell, I'm all about the cross genre and the mashups.
Mm-hmm. Very
and
nice.
Then with my, thank you. And then with my steampunk, I have the Ether Psychics. That is in my alternate history. The Civil War has remained purely defensive, so it's gone into a stalemate. Coal supplies are running low, so it's up to my characters to figure out whether Ether would be a good new power source. Of course, it's way more than they bargained for. And then the spinoff of that is the Inspector Davidson mysteries. And so all of my books are mainly urban fantasy, mainly steampunk with strong romance subplots.
Very cool. Susan says, Tori, you are full of surprises. So she is not wrong. She also says that she loves the Dragon Lords. And Katie says, love you, Timothy Mouse.
Oh, Timothy, you're already getting fans.
I know, right? Okay, so let's start off with just the basics. What have you always enjoyed science fiction and fantasy? Or is this something that you've come new to since you started writing? What is your history? What is your affinity with the sci-fi fantasy area of fiction? Let's start with Cecilia.
I believe that I've loved science fiction and fantasy ever since I was a kid. Those tended to be the books that I picked up from the library, especially once I figured out, it's like, oh, you find one and then you find even more. Like I distinctly remember finding Anne McCaffrey's Harper Hall trilogy when I was maybe still slightly young to read them. So yeah, I think I've always wanted the world to be a little bit more magical, and I found that through books.
Gotcha. I'm going to turn my screen off for just a second, put some chapstick on. Susan, you want to let us know how you came into fantasy?
I think it was just pure genetics. The way for me, it was fairy tales, Thumbelina, from the time that, you had the pop-up books and they had Thumbelina, and I was just like, enwrapped with the different stories. And then just laying on the driveway at night and staring up at the stars and thinking, we cannot only be the only people in the world. There has to be more than just us out there. And, those combination of love of fantasy and knowing that we're not alone out in the universe, it just seemed natural to gravitate towards fantasy and sci-fi. Right.
Tori?
Well, I was just glancing at my bookshelves actually. As a child, I used to love things like the Magic Faraway Tree. That might be just an English one. I'm not sure if that's that.
I don't think I'm familiar.
Reached the States or not, but that was basically a group of kids who found this tree, and basically when they went in it, it used to stop, the tree spun round and it used to stop in different magical worlds, and that really appealed to me as a kid. As an adult, my favorite sort of thing is John Flanagan, who writes the YA Rangers Apprentice series, Mercedes Lackey, who writes the Dragon Jousters series. So I kind of never really grew up from the Magic Faraway Tree. I just, my books got a little bit more complicated.
That's a good way to put it. Complicated is a good way to go there. Very nice, very nice. Do we need to clarify what the difference is between fantasy and science fiction? I mean, there is a difference, I think, personally. What do you guys think? Do you separate those two, or is it always fantasy sci-fi as one entity? Tori?
I don't know if this is official, but in my head, I think of science fiction as exploring, as starting off with humans exploring different planets like Star Trek and big spaceship machines and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
fantasy as opposed to urban fantasy, which obviously is magical beings or whatever on this planet, but fantasy is the worlds, like worlds that you just make up from the ground upwards, different planets. I suppose technically that's sci-fi as well, but sci-fi I always think about the spaceships and going and investigating and battles and stuff like that. Fantasy is more about the world building to me.
Gotcha. Okay. Susan, what do you think? If there's a difference between the two, what do you think it is?
That there used to be, and I actually have one series that I call a grounded sci-fi, which is space exploration and the battles and the more technical stuff. And it still has the romantic elements, but my Project Gleesy series is very grounded. It's more scientific. It's more, they don't have the paranormal elements.
Gotcha.
But, my other series tend to have a mixture of the fantasy sci-fi mixture to it. So they'll have, like the shapeshifters in my Seraphim series, like the one I have behind me. You have the alien. I should do it this way. You have the alien, but he's also a cat shifter. So you do have those fantasy elements to the sci-fi, but I think that you can have just the strict sci-fi element, or you can have the sci-fi fantasy.
Gotcha. Cecilia?
I agree that at this point there seems to be a continuum.
Gotcha.
From the hard sci-fi that's all spaceships, computers, et cetera, all the way over to I guess we would call epic fantasy, where it's like the completely made up world, not with elements that look familiar but not necessarily based in our world. There was this great quote that I wish I could take credit for, which is that all magic is basically science that hasn't been explained yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first time I ever heard that quote was in a discussion about Discovery of Witches.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, I have yet to start season 3, but can't wait of that one. But yeah, I would say that coming up through the reading path that I did, especially with Anne McCaffrey, where the Dragon Riders of Pern, it's science fiction.
Right.
But the flagship trilogy reads like a fantasy.
Gotcha. I have not read those, but I would have never thought of those as science fiction.
Yeah. And, they start off with, the planet Rookbot, or however you say it. Apparently, I've been saying all my Anne McCaffrey words wrong in my head for 30 years.
Oh, no.
That, it's got a whole explanation of where the thread comes from. Right. And then you go into it and it's all dragons, and you kind of forget that there is this planetary thing that's going on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So when I started writing and started looking to publish, especially with the lycanthropy files, where it basically is right on the cusp of, okay, it's lycanthropy, werewolves. We think about this as being a purely fantasy thing, but it's got a very scientific basis in that it's a genetic disorder that's just been pushed a little bit in my world. And so I was really frustrated. Oh, I have to pick one. And so I was very happy to hear, okay, urban fantasy is probably where it fits best. And I would say probably in urban fantasy, that's where we have the opportunity to do a lot of mixing and matching.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Very cool. Okay, so let's see. Do you have to do, for your stories, do you have to do any kind of research to build your worlds, or do you just stick to the fact that it's fiction and you can create whatever you want and you don't need to worry about it? We'll start with Cecilia and go back the other way.
I do have a research background, and so I can't not research my books. So when it came to the steampunk, it was, of course, alternate history, which ends up being a huge puzzle of, if you change this one thing, what other things end up changing.
Right.
And currently I'm working on a time travel fantasy adventure series for Falstaff. And so I'm doing lots of research into Constantinople and the First Crusade.
Interesting.
And then, of course, for the lycanthropy files, I had to get at least a basic understanding of how genetics work. And it's interesting because in my reviews for many of my books, some of the reviewers say, okay, we can tell that she has a scientific or research background because she really makes it work very well.
Right. Very cool. Just quickly, there's some comments from the readers here. It says, I love the magic-based paranormal, but I'm loving the trend of science-based shifters in the last few years. So there you go.
Yay.
It's a thing. You're right there. You're right there.
I was early.
You were early. Yeah, absolutely. Another comment, I think both are what we know pushed to an extreme, with fantasy being more character and world driven and sci-fi with more technology. So that those are some opinions from readers about the differences and similarities there. Susan, do you have to do much research, or do you just make it all up?
I do a lot of research, which is kind of surprising, I think, for some people, because when you're making these up, you can write anything as long as you can make it believable.
Right.
But there still has to be a certain amount of science that goes behind how this came about. And, like when I wrote my Project Lisi series, of course, I had to do a lot of research because it was more grounded. And so, but also doing my others, having the right kind of weapons, having, the right kind of clothing, the color of the sky, the water, what makes up a planet, what doesn't make up a planet. All of these components are very important to make the story believable.
Gotcha. Tori?
Yes. I had to do more research about geneticism on my on the Tori side, on the aliens, because of the basis for why they needed the human females instead of their own females. So I needed a basic facts to start the whole series. But on the Victoria side, I kind of have two things. One of my urban fantasy series is based on DNA changes that are actual fact, that don't take a lot of stretch to make them into the abilities that my guys have. They're based on fact. These changes probably won't take place for about another 2,000-3,100 years, whatever. But they're happening to some people now. So it's not that I've just made up these people like Supermen. They are actually things that are happening now. And thirdly, like I said, I write MPreg, and I just don't like my guys to just magically have babies. I mean, obviously you've got to stretch believability, but the fact that, people believe in werewolves, we're wolf shifters. That's a stretch anyway.
Right.
And I get quite scientific about anogenital distances and things that males can have that, that apart from a slight hormone change and a few inner tubes, for want of a better expression, males are perfectly capable of breastfeeding, which most people don't realize.
Right.
So you kind of put in like little things like that really cool. I think they're really cool anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite piece of technology that you've created for your stories that you just love and wish was real and you could have in your own life right this moment?
Transporters. If I could get from point A to point B, it would be like, with the snap of a finger, that would be like wonderful, because I think of all the amount of time that I spend traveling that, I could spend riding.
Yeah.
Or the replicator. I would really not have to cook food, just push a button and have it done.
There you go. Tori or Cecilia, anything you've created for your world that is something you wish you had right now in your own world?
I don't know. I can think of a few guys that I'm quite happy to be evil about and wish them swollen ankles and morning sickness on. I can honestly say that something that I need right at this moment in time.
That's crazy. Very cool. Very cool. Cecilia, anything that you would like to pull out of your stories and have in real life?
So I was just trying to think about the steampunk ones. Yes, there are a couple of mentions in there of like very personal dirigible type vehicles. And I think that would be a lot of fun.
That would be fun. That would be fun. I'd be down for that. You make that happen, you let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see here. Suzanne says, same, she loves going places but hates traveling. So there's another one for the transporters. DeLorean says, I always wonder what the substance is in those replicators. If 3D printers are anything to go by, it's plastic. Ew.
I'm thinking freeze dried. So maybe a lot of freeze dried chemical things.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
There you go. There you go. Let's see. There's a question. Most stories are humanoid based for obvious reasons, but does anyone have a main or significant supporting character that are not humanoid? And if you don't now, would you ever consider it? So let's start with Tori and we'll go around.
Yes, definitely. My aliens are humanoid at the moment. I mean, there might be 7-foot blue badass ones, but and there's some that got tails, etc. It's amazing what they can do with the tails, believe me.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, no, I would. I've kind of half planned a second series where the aliens are definitely not humanoid, but I'm not any further with the planning yet because I've still got a lot to do in this one.
Gotcha. Cecilia?
Well, Timothy Mouse would like to make mention of Sir Raleigh the Grimalkin, who looks like a cat, might have been inspired by yours truly.
Gotcha.
And he ends up being kind of a guardian, kind of a guard, kind of a pain in the butt, as many cats can be, right?
As his namesake, yeah.
Yes, right, Mr. Kitty? Gonna say meow? And of course, he's not gonna talk when I want him to.
Yeah.
I kind of like Sir Raleigh.
Yep. Susan?
There we go.
Now, see, he did talk.
There you go. There you go.
One of my favorite stories is the one that I have the cover for here. And this is Madison Grill's story. And they're two alien species that I introduced in one of the stories, and she becomes the best friend for one of my human characters. And this story is actually when she meets her significant other. And it's just, you forget the fact that they're not humanoid. Yeah. And, you know, there's enough characteristics that are different about them, but the whole story is just, it's about the love, it's about the family, it's about the relationship, and hilarious. And, you know, they have pets that are alien pets that are a little bit very talkative, you know, but they're, you know, they're unique, which makes them special. But I love writing the fact that you can write stories, even if the characters aren't human, you could still show that there's love and a relationship.
Right. Well, that was going to actually be
contained.
Yeah. That was actually going to be my next question. What human characteristics do you give your non-human characters? Are there specific things that you think from the human world need to be moved into these new characters? What about your aliens or your fantasy characters? What reminds us of humans in them? What characteristics do they have that are human characteristics? So Susan, since you already were talking about love, is there anything else? I mean, capacity to love clearly is one of those. What else?
Well, if you watch anything in the animal kingdom, you could see the relationship between a mother bear and her cubs. You can see, you know, that the grouping in an elephant, how they have that hierarchy, but how they're protective and how they work together. So, you know, if you look at the animal kingdom in general, even ants, you know, how you have the queen and how the workers, and they have, you know, different functions, and you have the ones that care for the queen, and the ones that, you know, build the nest, and the ones that are willing to make a boat so that they can float so the rest of the hive. So if you look at that, then you realize you could bring those characteristics into any of your alien creatures.
Right.
Because it's going to go beyond just human.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see that capability.
Cool. Tori, are there specific human characteristics you wanted to make sure were included in your non-human characters?
I think it depends what you class as human characteristics, because I don't think emotions, like we're talking about, are humanoid at all.
Okay.
I mean, for instance, I have a dog who's very loving, but is a stubborn ass. And I can think of so many people that he reminds me of.
Yeah.
So, you know, the whole, because we write romance, and the like Susan said about a mother bear and a cubs, all those are emotions. They're not characteristics, or they are, but they're not specifically for humans.
Right.
When I think of humanoid, I think of the actual body appearance, like legs, arms, eyes, mouth,
Gotcha.
breathing, that sort of thing. And I know there are a lot of differences you can have in that. But that's kind of like, I think more of the body, more not how they act or how they think.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Cecilia, how about you?
It's sort of to piggyback off that. Yeah, when I was thinking about this, particularly when it comes to my Fae characters, because I think one of the fun things about writing Fae is that they have a value system that's different from the human value system, like, or that we like to say is different from the human value system, because Fae are all about appearances and perfection, and we maybe don't want to admit to that. I mean, especially we're all here as women, we know that there are humans value perfection and appearances. So it's sort of looking at it, okay, it's maybe human exaggerated part of it. And then one of the things that I really enjoyed playing with my werewolves is that in a lot of werewolf stories, they shift smoothly from animal to human. But mine don't necessarily do that. They might still be human in appearance, but that animal brain is still in control, at least for a few minutes. It's kind of like, with sleep paralysis, you wake up, but your body still can't move because you're still partially in REM sleep.
Right.
And so that, of course, can get people or get my werewolves in trouble, especially if they're the ones who end up with the surprise lycanthropy as adults rather than being raised in the community from childhood.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's looking at the human experience and seeing, okay, what can be exaggerated or what can be brought over. Right.
Very cool. From the comments, somebody says, I want the language translators, either implants or earbuds, doesn't matter. So that would definitely be a cool, fun tidbit to have. And then there's a question that's actually very similar to one of my questions. So we'll use their version. If you were suddenly inserted into your own books, now, my question ended with which book would it be and why? But in addition to that, how would you fare in some of the same situations you put your characters in? So let's start with where I ended. If you were to suddenly find yourself in one of your fantasies or sci-fis, which one would you want? Which one would you hope that you ended up in? And then we'll add on for the reader, we'll add on how would you do in the situation that your characters are in that book. So we'll start with Susan.
I would probably be in the Dragon Lord series.
Okay.
It would be really cool if I had the ability to shift into a dragon. But I think overall I would do really well. A lot of the scenes, like in Tracking Trisha, where she's in the woods and stuff, that is something that I could definitely do fairly well with, I think.
Very cool.
So I think overall I would do the best in it, but especially if I had the ability then to do the shape shifting as well, then I know I could do really well.
That would be cool. Tori, how about you?
I think in my Shift to Rescue series, the Panthers are run down the female line. and obviously it's MM, so the main two characters are always two guys. But the Panthera, who leads the whole Panther clan for the Eastern Coast, is the best kick-ass grandma you ever want to know. And she does it in 4-inch stilettos and Chanel suits, and I would love to be her.
That would be cool.
Takes names and beats them all up. So
I can totally see you.
Nobody touches her kids or her grandkids.
I can totally see you wandering around, taking care of business in heels and a nice suit. I can see that 100% in my mind. Absolutely. Cecilia, how about you? Where would you want to end up?
I'm a bit of two minds about it. So
Okay.
I would love to hang out with the crew in my steampunk novels.
Okay.
Because I absolutely love those characters, and I think that I would fit in really well with them. Besides, I would also love, some parts of the Victorian clothes. I do wear corsets at conferences, especially the steampunk focused ones, and I can confirm that those are not necessarily the most comfortable things. So I don't know if I want to have to wear one all the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would love to hang out with the Ether Psychics crew. I would also have a hard time within this society because, of course, it's set in the late 1800s, where it's before women are able to vote. Women's voices are not necessarily heard or paid attention to. So I also suspect I would spend a lot of the time mad, although I'm not entirely sure how different that would be from currently.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Let's see here. There's a comment. The Panthera character is a character that you love to hate, but then you end up loving her, just loving her. So there we go. And like I said, I don't love to hate you. That was never the thing. So we skipped past that completely. But yeah, I could totally see you kicking butt and taking names in heels and a suit. That would be, I can envision that for sure. What are some of your favorite sci-fi fantasy books, TV shows, movies, things that you've seen around that you think are just super, really well done, really interesting, cool technology, cool world building? What are some of your favorites? Let's get some recs. Who's got one? Anybody think of something?
I just finished reading the Finishing School series from Gail Carriger, which was so much fun.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Anybody else have any? We love sharing recommendations. This convention's all about sharing book love. So I'm all for the recommendations. If you have more than one, you can holler it. Comments already started popping with Doctor Who.
I wish you'd warned me. I can't remember what the author's called.
Yeah, we've already got Doctor Who in the comments. So that was, I barely got the question out of my mouth when Doctor Who popped up.
I barely watch TV. I'm all about the books. And like
Doctor Who's
my favorite is YA high fantasy, classic fantasy, and I can't remember this author's name, but I'll add it to the comments when we've done.
Perfect. I love it. Cecilia, did you have something else to add?
I was going to say, Doctor Who is one of those great examples of right on the corner of science fiction and fantasy, because the technology is just so far beyond, at least most of it, that it does seem a lot like magic.
Yes, absolutely. Another comment says, anything by Gail Carriger is a must read. And I second that. Susan, do you have any recommendations? Books, TV, movies?
The biggest thing that we've been doing for the last 2.5 years, and one of my favorite things, is movie watching. And of course, you've got Stargate, you got all the Star Treks. They're coming out with a new Star Trek, by the way. I did like the original 3 Star Wars movies. I wasn't really that enthused with any of the ones since then. But of course, you've got the 3 original ones, which, except for the fact now that I kind of didn't like that Princess Leia is wearing all this makeup. I think they could have done without her having to have her lips painted while she's shooting the bad guys. But lately we've been watching The Witcher series and The Umbrella Academy. So
Umbrella Academy is really cool.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of really great movies. I try to stay away from the television series or the cable series, because then what happens is you want to binge watch them, and that's like a big no-no. So we try to stick to the movies, but you know, you've always got those favorites that you could watch. You know, for me, I could watch Stargate over and over and over, the original movie.
Right.
And you just don't get tired of it.
Yeah.
And that's a case where having that language barrier.
Right. The interpreting.
You know, it's like,
yeah.
That
would
be
be cool.
Okay, I wish I had the you know, translator.
Right. In the comments, we've got a vote for Tamora Pierce. So that's YA fantasy, definitely. Let's see here. High fantasy series, The Hardstorm Saga by Dana Martin. So that's one. Another vote for The Witcher. Somebody says Susan says I love Stargate. So definitely Stargate fans. Did you think of anything to add? Any titles to add? You're gonna put them. Never mind. You're gonna put them in the comments.
I'm gonna put it in the comments, yeah, because I don't have my Kindle to hand, and I can't remember what this author's called.
Gotcha.
You know, with YA, Alexander Keyes, you know, The Forgotten Door, you know, he did the Escape to Witch Mountain. You know, those books are to me like classics too.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Have you ever, when you've been writing any of your fantasy or sci-fi stories, have you ever written yourself into a corner and created something new in the world or the technology in order to get yourself out of the hole that you wrote yourself into? That's something I like to ask the people who write magic in general, because a lot of times you get in a bind and then all of a sudden everything's fine because magic, you know, just, yeah, poof, I'm gone, you know, whatever. So I thought that would be appropriate here too.
You have to be really careful doing that, because readers do not forgive that. They don't forgive, oh, you just make this up to get them out of the situation. You can't get away with that most of the time.
Well,
and you have to keep very careful track of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the nice thing about being able to, if you're writing the book and that happens, you may have to do a little extra work and go back in and build that in ahead of time, but you can sometimes make it work. Have you ever found yourself in that situation where you had to create something new that you maybe hadn't planned on just to kind of get yourself out of a spot?
I haven't, but what I've done is I've written something and I didn't understand why I wrote it that way. And then 5 books later, it's like, oh my God, you know, subconsciously did I know that I was going to need this?
Right.
And when that happens, that's like a oh my God moment, you know. It's like, you know, how does what's going on in my brain? Am I really communicating with aliens? Because I never would have expected that.
That's the best way to use secondary characters as well. If you just like put them in randomly, you can like pick them out when you need. So that's kind of like laying the foundation for something like that as well.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Giving yourself an out. Very cool. Let's see. DeLorean says all of your great escapes, which is what we're calling this panel of science fiction and fantasy stories. All of your great escapes are fabulous, but do you have one that you are especially proud of? Anything that you've created that you're like, yeah, that's super cool? Any particular one that you might be a little more a fan of than something else, maybe?
You mean the book or a particular issue in a book?
I'll take either.
What do you think, Timothy? He says Sir Raleigh definitely is my best.
I feel like I could have probably bet a quarter on that.
Okay then.
And he approves. Very nice. Very nice.
Yes. But I would say definitely the Fae Files, because I think it shows my development as an author. That previously every book had been focused on a different character or a different, couple. And somebody's ready to play. Whereas with the Fae Files, it is focused first person point of view of the main character, or alternating with her and the hero. And I'm like, oh, cool. I've managed to keep this story going with 4 books so far and at least 2 more planned.
Nice. Very cool. Susan, or
think,
yeah, or
sorry.
Tori? No, you're good. Did you come up with one?
I think the series that is my favorite even now after 6 years. 6 years out, yeah, six years since I wrote Serious Wolves. That was my first shifter series. I'd written before that, but that was the first shifter series, and it was also MPreg. And 6.5, nearly 7 years ago, MPreg was still kind of fanfic. There weren't very many what I call mainstream, if you can call it mainstream, books out about it. So it was there was quite a lot of surprise people when they got that series. But it's my best-selling one, even nearly 7 years later. And incidentally, I've decided to write a second series based on that one, and that's going to be started hopefully this year.
That is super cool. As soon as you were saying that, I was noticing somebody in the comments was saying, I love the Serious Wolf series so much. And then you said that. And so I think somebody's head's exploding right now. Just possibly. I don't have any photographic evidence of such a thing, but I feel like it's something that might be happening.
Yeah.
Susan, do you have any of your series that you think are something that you've done that's super clever that you're really proud of, or that is your favorite of the others?
I have 2 books that I would say are my favorite, and one series that is really pushing to the forefront of being one of my favorite. And, you know, it's like asking which is your favorite kid. And but there's something I love about all of them. You know, there's something special about every single one. But I would say Gracie's Touch from my Zion series, Dust from my YA series, and my 7 Kingdoms series, which is a contemporary fantasy series.
Gotcha.
And I think it's just with the 7 Kingdoms, it's the whole world building, and, you know, them going from such a major war where they were trying to kill each other and all of the terrible things that happened. And them learning that they're not enemies, that they're actually become very good friends. And in the end, it takes all of them to save their world. Right. They all have to come together as one. Gotcha. So I think, you know, it's just, and of course you're dealing with, you know, the Isle of the Dragons and the Isle of the Sea Serpent. You know, so I get to live all my fantasy characters, from dragons to mermen to, you know, magic to elementals to pirates. Gotcha. So there's it's just got all of those elements that come together, but they all need their special skills to be able to succeed. And I think that's one thing that we're seeing now, is if you've got that unity, that you can push back against evil.
Gotcha. My next question is actually, I'm going to let you start because you started to touch on it a tiny little bit. My question was going to be, do you have like traditional, regular, just human people in your stories in addition to your fantasy and sci-fi characters? And if so, how do the humans interact with them?
Yeah, I have, you know, just regular characters. And it's the same thing as, you know, meeting somebody that's a little bit different from you. It doesn't matter that they're different. It doesn't mean you can't be friends or you can't find common ground. Right. And I think that's what makes, you know, Star Trek, for example, such a great series, is because you see all of these, not just humans, and they're just regular humans, but other species coming together, and they're like, you know, you have kids, you have families, you have hopes, you have dreams. And I think that that's important to bring into your stories so that it makes it more realistic. It gives hope. And, you know, it's a vision, you know, that everybody wants to have.
Right. Tori, how are there humans in your fantasy and sci-fi? And if so, how do they interact with those characters?
Well, it's all humans in my male-male romance, because some of them is urban fantasy, which is human-based, and my shifters are all like animals and humans. In my Tori Kellett science fiction alien books, the guys are aliens and the women are from Earth.
Gotcha.
It's a romance.
Yes, I know. I see. The thing is, I have to ask questions I already know the answers to sometimes.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. We all have our little fantasies, and we end up writing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind being kidnapped by an alien prince. In fact, I'm quite happy to leave the door open for it.
That's funny. Cecilia, how about in your stories?
In the steampunk, they're pretty much all human, and the women have each a very specific psychic power. Like, I didn't want to create majorly powerful psychics because that gets way too complicated to write. So there are one or two men who have slight psychic abilities as well, but pretty much the men are, just men, and the women. And the theory that somebody puts forth is that because women are so oppressed, they have developed these extra abilities in order to be able to survive.
Right.
As for the urban fantasy, it's a mix of shifters, witches of varying degrees of power, and humans. And some of the humans know, in typical urban fantasies, some of the humans know and accept, some of the humans are in complete denial, and most of them are clueless.
Yeah. Very cool, very cool. All right, so we are wrapping up our chat today. I would love for you to be able to let people know anything that you had come out recently, anything that you might be releasing later during the year, if you have any appearances online or in person anywhere that people can find you, and where should they look online to learn more about you and your books. So why don't we start with Susan, and then we'll work our way around.
So I have Bear's Rebel with a Raya's Pet, and I have a free music video or music song that they can download to also go with the book that I wrote.
That's
so I've been
cool.
into songwriting, and
cool.
that just came out. And then I'm working on, I almost have Jarman's Jane Doe down, which is my next book in the Lords of Cassia series, and it will be releasing in the next couple of months. And I have a brand new series called Girls from the Street. And it's a contemporary romance with a lot of action and adventure and twist involved in it. And so I'll have the 5 books done in it, and we'll be releasing that. And then I'm excited about, in October, we'll have the Pets in Space 7 book coming out. And that's our benefit to hero dogs.
Right.
And if I get back from the trail in time, I will hopefully be at Shameless in November.
Gotcha. And just for people who aren't familiar, I know what you mean by the trail, but tell people what you are doing, because it is super cool.
Well, March 23rd, we will actually be on the Appalachian Trail.
Ooh.
And our goal is to do a through hike. We're going to do a flip-flop. We're going to do Harper's Ferry to Maine, and then Harper's Ferry to Georgia. But we plan on doing 2,194 miles of hiking and primitive camping. So it's going to take us about 6 to 7 months, which is why I said if I had to be in any book, it would be like with Tracking Trisha and I'm in the woods.
Yep.
I will definitely be a pro by the time we get home.
Very cool.
Anybody who wants to find out more about me can go to SeSmithFL.com, or they can email me at SeSmithFL@gmail.com.
Very cool. Tori, how about you? What have you got going on, and where can people find you?
Okay. My 2 current series, Baby and the Wolf, is book 1 in the series, and Baby and the Billionaire just came out a couple of weeks ago, and Baby and the Warrior is on pre-order.
Very cool.
My MF series, the book 1 is Kidnapped by the Alien Prince, and Betrayed by the Alien Warrior actually comes out next week.
Very nice.
They're both KU exclusive. As far as conferences go, I'm actually the next Florida conference I'm at is in September at St. Pete, Books at the Beach.
Okay.
So people can see me there if there's any local Florida people going. And I am at a signing in Vegas as well in November. I'm on Facebook in my name, Victoria Sue or Tori Kellett. You can find me there. Technically, I do have other social media channels, but I don't really spend a lot of time on them. So Facebook's the thing. I'd also like to offer any commenters on the post today an e-copy of Baby and the Wolf, or maybe the second book if they've got this, Baby and the Panther, and also one of the Tori ones. So
very cool.
I'll draw that in 2 or 3 days when people have had a chance to comment on the post.
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, because we've got quite a few that are watching now, and there'll definitely be more that'll catch it later. So that'll be fun. So we'll I'll talk to Tori and we'll figure out exactly when we're going to do the drawing so everybody knows when the cutoff of that is. So thank you for that. That's adorable. Okay, Cecilia, what's happening in Cecilia world?
Well, as you can imagine, being a sleep psychologist, the private practice has been very busy. And so my writing schedule has gotten a little bit off over the past year. My last release was last June. It was the 4th Fae Files book. I am back to writing and hope to have the release of the first Falstaff book, which at this point is called The Scandalous Sixth Life of Deptra Liqueur. I'm not sure if they'll change the title, but that is time travel fantasy adventure.
That is a big title.
Yeah, if I'd end up changing it. And then the Fae Files book 5 and maybe book 6, I'm planning on releasing in the fall, early spring, maybe another Inspector Davidson mystery next spring as well. As for my conference schedule, Jennifer, you and I will be hanging out at Dragon Con again. I just got my notification.
Yes, ma'am.
So excited.
Yay!
Yay! Between then and now, I'll also be doing Jordan Con and Con Carolinas. And I will be also doing Conjuration in the fall.
Excellent.
I've put in for a couple of others, still waiting to hear. I love going to conferences and meeting fans.
Yeah.
Online, you can find me at ceciliadominic.com. So that's CECILIA Dominic.com. You can, if you go to my website, you'll see a place to get a Cecilia Dominic starter kit. So that is 3 books, actually.
Nice.
Not sure how long I'll keep that at 3 books, but now is a great time to do it. My books are mostly widely available. I do have one series that is KU exclusive. That's the Dreamweavers and Truth Seekers series. And I'm also, sort of marginally on Twitter, Instagram, more on there. I'm Random Enophile, which is basically Random Wine Lover. It's less books, more food, more what I'm drinking, plenty of gratuitous cat pictures if you'd like to see more of Timothy Mouse.
Very cool,
and then,
very cool.
Also Facebook at Cecilia Dominic Author.
Fantastic. All right, I appreciate each of you taking some time this afternoon to chat with us about all things fantasy and sci-fi. And to all of you readers, everybody's saying thank you for all the books. So that's
thank you to the readers.
Yeah. Thank you, readers.
All right, so we've only got a couple more things left in today for the last day of our Coastal Magic 10th anniversary weekend. Hopefully you will catch some of those things that are still coming up, and our wrap up will be at 5:15. If you want to chat about how things went, we're going to just open that up to anybody who wants to join us. So that's it for now, and we will see you maybe later in the day. Have a good rest of your day, all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Jennifer.